amazing thing about land is it can fall in your various financial goals across various risk brackets. So the other aspect is, land can either be a very passive investment where you buy, some piece of land in the middle of nowhere and let it stay, and then, check up on it here and then, versus you actually buying a piece of land and constructing the property, getting rental income. You're managing that on a day-to-day basis. So, whether you're looking for passive income or more active income, real estate also can fall across both brackets. Yep. So now coming down into what we actually would be looking at when you're looking to invest in real estate is the three key, or rather two main real estate assets. So you have the land, and then you have actual buildings. Yeah. So in terms of the two items, they largely fall across the same sort of factors that you'll be looking at. So on the land side, you're basically looking at what is the economic growth rate. Yeah. What are the links and connections of property? Yeah. Because the number one rule of investing in land is what? Location, location, location. Yeah. And then thirdly is on the legal aspects. So in terms of, can you clarify and confirm that, who's the legal owner of the land, in terms of being able to enforce such ownership, and then, in case of any issues, can you, the court process is clear in terms of how you can get back the land in case of any issues. And then the other factor is urbanization. So this is also located in terms of the actual location where you're going to be purchasing the land. So a good example is Nairobi. Nairobi has been having one of the highest urbanization rates in the region, actually. So
what's urbanization?
So urbanization is the movement of people from rural areas into the major cities. So in Kenya, actually, as a whole, with the county system, you've had a massive uptick in urbanization rates. You're having, small counties which previously they were not connected to much, but now they're experiencing such fundamental growth because of, being able to have their own central government who are investing in the necessary infrastructure in etc. So, you're looking at massive urbanization rates to those small county towns. So onto the building side. So we have three various key types of buildings that you can be looking at. You have residential, you have commercial, and you have industrial. Yeah. Now on the residential side, so basically that's houses. Yeah, people's housing. So as you know, we have a massive housing deficit across the country. I mean, the numbers get thrown out by government every year. I think last year they were talking about 200,000 a year. This year talking about 500,000 a year. The various government initiatives are coming in place in terms of the low-cost housing initiative to try and bring down that housing deficit. Now,
which is, just to be clear, the number of houses that are needed.
Yeah, per year, exactly. And that's a factor of urbanization as well as population growth. Yep. Where obviously people need houses to live in. Yep. So in that sort of spectrum, you're looking at, a potential rental yield of about 5%, as stated previously, as well as capital appreciation depending on where you're located. Yep.
And capital appreciation is when the value of the house you own goes up.
Exactly.
Or the asset you own goes up.
Exactly. So those are the two key income streams for property. There's a rental income, and there's a capital appreciation. Now, just a quick rule of thumb, actually, on the real estate side, particularly on the residential houses. So a very easy way to quickly check the valuation of a property is using its rent. So if a house, the rent is 5,000, yeah, the quickest way to see whether it's actually well priced is multiply by 200. So naturally, when you multiply by 200, if the price is less than that, then you're somewhat getting a good bargain. Anything higher than that, then you're getting a raw deal. So it's a quick rule of thumb, same as the rule of 72. But that's just on the residential side. The same rule applies on the commercial side, where it's actually 100, because on the commercial side, the yield is 10%.
And this is in the event that you're thinking about buying a house and you're like, oh, I want to buy this house. And so I'm going to buy a house that's in the middle of, like, there's an apartment block. I want to buy one of those units that people currently live there so I can ask them how much is paying rent.
Yep.
I can decide, am I buying this apartment block, this apartment unit for a good price by asking how much you pay in rent? Then I multiply that number by 200 and see how close I am to that number in terms of how much the owner is asking for that unit.
Exactly.
Got it.
Exactly. Yep. So on the same sort of thought for how to look at the real estate investments on the commercial side, what's really important is you need to look at it as more so from a business perspective. A lot of people look at real estate as just buy and hold. On the commercial side, you're looking at what are the amenities nearby, what is attracting people to this property, what is my competition doing. So it's crucial to look at it from more business element, such as what Valo's talking about when you're running a business, unlike when you're buying a land, it's just buying land. There's no actual competition or any other business-like elements to it.
And so this is in case I'm thinking about buying a unit that I want to rent to companies to come rent. So for example, I want to build a block and then companies come and rent there, like an office block.
Spot on.
Then I need to ask myself, am I close to other amenities like roads?
Yeah.
How good is electricity in this area? Are there blackouts all the time? Stuff like that, because that's what businesses care about.
Spot on, exactly. So, so generally speaking, those are the key elements that you should be looking at in terms of when you're looking at purchasing real estate investments. Just a very high-level summary in terms of what I've learned to date and investing in the real estate field. So what's absolutely critical is always give an offer. So regardless of whether you feel like this is way higher than what my budget should have been, always consider giving an offer, whatever your budget was. So you're at this real estate conference, or you're at this what they call the first day when they're doing the offers. Show day, yeah, exactly. A show day, always get a price. You might be surprised. There's some steals that I've managed to get here and there, and you get shocked as to how either a developer is trapped for cash, or a seller just wants to off-hive the investment. So always give an offer. So the second point is obviously real estate investments are quite cash intensive, and Kenyans as a whole, we tend to really shy away from mortgages. I think it's about time our generation changes that mentality. Mortgages are there to actually facilitate you to purchase the assets. So in fact, the way I think about it is debt is the oil to our economy in terms of what makes the cogs spin. So for when you're looking at a property to purchase with a mortgage, particularly when you're already paying rent somewhere, you shouldn't be looking at the mortgage is 100K a month. I pay rent of 60K a month, so I'm losing 40K. No, because when you pay rent of 60K a month, you're giving somebody else 60K, and you never see that 60K. While in a mortgage, you're giving the bank 50K for interest, and then the other 50K is going in as to pay back the debt. So it's essentially a savings sort of mechanics, where you're saving actually 50K a month and only paying the bank 5K. So net, you should be comparing your interest to your rent, not the total mortgage payment. Yeah? And another big advantage of that is on the mortgage side, it forces you to save. So in line with what Lorraine was also saying, when you know you owe Prime Bank 10 million Kenya shillings every day when you wake up, you're not going to wake up and go and drink 5K, So it creates a discipline culture. So don't shy away from mortgages, basically.
Can I ask a really practical question? So I think there's a reason people shy away from mortgages. It's because usually the kind of houses we can afford to buy at this age are off-plan. And if you've been reading the newspaper, Suraya, all these other guys, I mean, what happens to, like, how do we assess that kind of risk? The development risk, let's say, that you're taking in buying an off-plan house. Secondly, you're talking about the cash flows in mortgages. Many times, the reason I'm paying 30K for rent is because that's all I can afford. So if I'm thinking of buying a house, how do I then, because many times it triples, how do I then think this same house I live in is worth 7 million? If I take a mortgage on it, I'll be paying 90,000. Where does that 90,000 come from? And how can we be more practical about how home ownership can happen in the Kenyan context and at our age?
Super exciting question because I've been struggling with it for a while. Do you remember earlier when we said know what you're buying, right? So and always split and be super clear. What am I buying in this instance, right? So there's a thing that people say, oh, I don't get a mortgage because I can't afford to mortgage this house that I live in. True, right? The house you live in might be worth a lot. You don't have a lot. Fair, right? It's facts, right? But what you're split what you're buying out and say, I want to buy a place. I want to own a house. You haven't said I want to live in the house I own. They're different, right? You could own a house and not live in it, right? What that then means is you can get a mortgage for another house in a place where you don't necessarily want to live and rent that out. And sometimes the math works out well enough that the rent that person's paying feeds a mortgage, or there's just a bit left, and you top that up. And then you keep living where you want to live, right? So you can always do that. And it's a math, like sit down and do the math and make sure that the math would work out. I'd also love to, so Stone's good at mortgages. I'd love for Stone to just unpack how you think through a mortgage, because there's a very big difference when you think about, I'm going to take a mortgage and pay it for 25 years, which is what the bank will, the bank might say, here's a 25-year mortgage, versus you take a 25-year mortgage, but you actually plan to pay it off in 10. And that has very big differences in terms of how much you actually pay for the house, right? Because there's always interest, right? Like it is a loan, you are paying interest on that house. So how do you think about that? How do you think about accumulating money? How, are there rules of thumb you've built for yourself around how to accumulate money before taking the mortgage so your mortgage payments are not too high? And then how do you think about the balance between, where you live versus what you own?
Great.
And then hopefully we can make this the last point. I'm guessing you guys are hungry? All right, cool. There's food outside, and then we can come back and do questions. Is that okay for guys? Cool. And we understand if guys need to leave as well. Like, totally respect that.
Super. So I think the first question I'll tackle is on the due diligence aspect in terms of developers. So obviously, after the real estate boom we've had the last 10 years or so, you've seen some of the less credible developers now, various issues coming to light on things that they didn't do well. But, there are only about 2 or 3 that I can think of. There's still, a good number of developers who are doing what they were meant to do and have built high-quality projects, reasonably priced, with no legal issues. So yes, there's a risk of falling into these 1 or 2 developers who obviously might have cut corners. But I think the key thing is just ensuring you've undertaken an extremely thorough due diligence. There's an element of bad luck, obviously, because there are many people who didn't see. Actually, a colleague of mine bought one of the projects which have an issue. We're just discussing that today, actually. So and he did an extremely thorough due diligence. Nobody would have seen it come. So there is an element of bad luck, but generally shouldn't force you to get you to shy away, from investing and purchasing a home, as long as you've done, your due diligence to a large extent. Additionally, there are various insurance-related policies that you can take to cover you for that, especially on a mortgage, where if you take 105% mortgage, which KCB is now offering, and I think a lot of the other players are following suit, they come with an upfront insurance policy on it, so that if there are any issues, and you call on the insurance, and they pay out the balance of the mortgage, and you can have it such that it also includes your portion of what you've put in. So essentially, you're fully covered. They're very well priced, I think, for a 10 million mortgage, you're looking at, or call it a 5 million mortgage, you're looking at about 10,000 shillings a year for insurance policy of that sort, which is a no-brainer if you're paying a mortgage of 5 million. So that's the first item. I think Moses tackled the issue regarding the difference between the rent that we currently pay versus what you would want to own as a house. So basically, maybe just to add on to that, the mortgage payments actually, there's a misconceptualization of how high they are, because a lot of people don't realize the various advantages that they can look at. So a good example is a good friend of mine who's a pilot. So he was taking up a mortgage about 2 years ago. The company that he works for, obviously an airline, can pay him in dollars because of airlines make the money in dollars, but he's earning his money in Kenya shillings. Now, if you didn't know, hard currency, which is dollars, pounds, and the Western currencies, have a much lower cost of funds than Kenya shillings. That's driven by the difference in inflation rates, but that's a conversation for another day. So on the Kenya shilling mortgage that she was just about to sign off on, actually, he was paying something close to 100,000 a month for, I think, a 7.5 million mortgage. Yeah. So we're just having a chat about it, and then I asked him, why don't you force your employer to change your salary into dollars because of the lower cost of funds? He didn't understand why. He later changed it, and his mortgage payments dropped from 100,000 to 40,000. So literally, it's just understanding the various small things that you can tweak, the difference can be night and day. We're talking 60,000 a month. We're talking 700,000 a year, and it's a 20-year mortgage. So it's a no-brainer. So it's just capturing on and getting educated and to understand all these small things that you might not be aware of, which could be saving you a significant amount of money if you were to get a mortgage.
I think if you take a mortgage, please, you need to take a mortgage protection scheme. That's absolutely, in case you die, but then your family is still protected. Secondly, mortgage repayment amounts are tax deductible. So,
If you live in the house.
If you live in the house, yes. Yeah, if you live in the house, it's tax deductible.